Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and looked out at the stars. His ship was not big like the alien vessels he had seen, but it was home to 30 humans who trusted him with their lives. The year was 2157, and humans had been part of the Galactic Union for 15 years now. Jake was a tall man with dark hair and serious eyes. He had been in space for most of his adult life, first as a pilot and now as a captain. His crew was good people. Lieutenant Amy Brooks was his second in command. She was smart and knew all the rules the Union expected humans to follow. Chief Engineer Pete Collins kept their ship running, no matter what problems came up. Dr. Lisa Harper studied aliens and helped them talk to new species they met. The Union was made up of 12 different alien races. All of them had stopped fighting wars long ago. They used energy shields to protect themselves and preferred to talk rather than fight. The Union had strict rules about violence. No member species was allowed to carry weapons or start fights. Everything had to be solved with words and agreements. Jake remembered when Earth first joined the Union. The aliens had been shocked by human history. They could not understand how a species that fought so many wars could ever become peaceful. But humans had proven themselves over 15 years. They followed all the rules and never caused trouble. The New Horizon was on a routine mission in the Kepler 442 system. They were supposed to map new planets and look for signs of life. It was quiet work, but Jake enjoyed it. Space was vast and full of mysteries. Every day brought something new to discover. Amy Brooks walked up to Jake's chair. She held a data pad in her hands and looked worried. Captain, we're picking up some strange readings from the outer system. It looks like ships, but they're not sending any Union identification codes. Jake frowned. All Union ships were supposed to announce themselves when they entered a system. It was basic safety protocol. How many ships? At least 5, sir. Maybe? More. They're big, much bigger than anything in our files. Pete Collins looked up from his station. He was a short man, with grease on his hands from working on the engines. Captain, those ships are using some kind of technology I've never seen before. The energy patterns are completely different from Union tech. Dr. Harper moved to her science station and began running scans. She was young, but very smart about alien cultures. Captain, I'm not getting any response to our standard greeting protocols. These ships aren't answering our calls at all. Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. In 15 years of Union membership, this had never happened before. Every species they had met followed the same basic rules of contact. You identified yourself, stated your purpose, and opened communication channels. Keep trying to contact them, Jake ordered. Use all the standard Union greeting formats. Maybe they just don't recognize our language codes. The hours passed slowly. The unknown ships continued to approach the New Horizon, but they remained silent. Jake could see them now on the main screen. They looked like nothing he had ever seen before. The ships were huge and had a strange organic appearance, as if they had been grown rather than built. Their hulls were dark and covered with what looked like armor plating. Captain, Amy said quietly, those ships are now surrounding us. They've cut off our escape routes. Jake's training kicked in. He had studied every first contact scenario in the Union handbook. The rules were clear. Remain calm, keep trying to communicate, and under no circumstances should violence be used. The Union believed that all intelligent species could be reasoned with if the right approach was found. Dr. Harper, what can you tell me about these ships? Lisa looked up from her instruments with worry in her eyes. Captain, I'm detecting life signs, but they're unlike anything in our databases. These creatures are large, much larger than humans. And their ships, they're definitely designed for war. War? Pete asked. But the Union hasn't seen war in over 200 years. Jake nodded grimly. The Union species had all evolved beyond the need for violence. They had advanced energy weapons that could disable rather than kill, and they had learned to solve problems through negotiation and compromise. The idea of meeting a species that still practiced warfare was something the Union had never prepared for. Suddenly, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A harsh alien voice filled the bridge. The words were translated by the ship's computer, but the tone was unmistakably hostile. "Small vessel, you will surrender immediately. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. Your ship and crew will be processed according to Vorth Empire protocols. Resistance is futile." Jake's blood ran cold. The alien voice continued, "You have 60 seconds to comply. Failure to surrender will result in the destruction of your vessel." Amy looked at Jake with fear in her eyes. "Captain, what are our options?" Jake quickly reviewed everything he knew about Union first contact procedures. The handbook said to remain calm, attempt negotiation, and trust in the universal desire for peace that all intelligent species supposedly shared. But something about these aliens felt different. Their ships looked like weapons. Their words sounded like threats, and they had given no indication that they were interested in peaceful contact. "Open a channel," Jake ordered. "This is Captain Jake Martinez of the Earth vessel New Horizon. We are peaceful explorers operating under the authority of the Galactic Union. We request immediate diplomatic contact with your leaders to resolve this situation through negotiation." The response came back immediately. "Negotiation is for the weak. The Vorth Empire does not negotiate with inferior species. You have 30 seconds to surrender or be destroyed." Pete Collins was checking his instruments frantically. "Captain, they're charging some kind of weapon system. Energy readings are off the charts." Dr. Harper was studying the alien transmissions. "Captain, I don't think these aliens understand or care about Union protocols. They seem to view us as enemies or prey." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Amy, send an emergency signal to Union Command. Tell them we've encountered a hostile species that doesn't recognize Union authority. Pete, prepare the emergency escape pods just in case." The countdown continued on the alien channel. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Jake watched the massive alien ships on his screen and realized that 15 years of peaceful exploration were about to come to an end. The New Horizon and her crew were about to face something the Union had never prepared them for, an enemy that preferred conquest to conversation. "Time's up, humans," the alien voice said with what sounded like satisfaction. The Vorth ship fired first. A strange blue energy beam struck the New Horizon and passed right through their shields as if they were made of paper. The ship shook violently, and the lights flickered. Pete Collins rushed to his control panel, checking the damage reports that were flooding in. "Captain, they've hit our main engines with some kind of bioelectric pulse. The engines are completely dead. We're not going anywhere." Jake felt his heart sink. The Union shields were supposed to protect against all known energy weapons, but these aliens had technology that was completely different. Through the main screen, he could see small pods launching from the Vorth ships. They were heading straight for the New Horizon. "Boarding pods," Amy said grimly. "They're coming to take the ship." Dr. Harper was studying the incoming pods through her instruments. "Captain, I'm reading 7 life forms in each pod. They're big, much bigger than humans. And their life signs are strange. They seem to have natural armor plating." Security Chief Danny Walsh appeared on the bridge. He was a strong man who had served in Earth's security forces before joining the space program. "Captain, I've got my people ready with standard Union pacification equipment, sonic disruptors, and neural dampeners. Should be enough to handle any boarding party. Jake nodded, but he felt uncertain. The Union's non-lethal weapons had always worked before because every species in the Union had similar nervous systems. But these Vorth were completely unknown. What if the Union weapons didn't work on them? The first boarding pod attached to the New Horizons hull with a loud clang. Jake could hear cutting tools working on the outer hull. The aliens were burning their way through the ship's armor. Within minutes, they would be inside. Danny, take your team and stop them at the airlock. Use standard procedures, but be ready for anything. Danny nodded and left the bridge with his security team. They were good people, trained in Union methods of crowd control and non-violent conflict resolution. They had never faced real combat before, but neither had any human in space for the past 15 years. The sounds of the alien cutting tools stopped. Jake heard the hiss of the airlock opening. Then came sounds he had never heard before. Heavy footsteps that didn't sound quite right, like metal scraping on metal, and a strange clicking noise that might have been alien communication. Danny's voice came over the comm system, tight with fear. Captain, these things are huge. They look like giant insects, all covered in natural armor. They're 7 feet tall, and they have claws like knives. Jake could hear the sound of Union weapons firing in the background. The sonic disruptors made a high-pitched whine, and the neural dampeners gave off a low buzzing sound. But then he heard something that made his blood run cold. Alien laughter. The weapons aren't working, Captain. Danny's voice was getting desperate. The sonic disruptors are bouncing right off their armor, and the neural dampeners don't seem to affect them at all. These things are just walking through our defenses like they're nothing. Dr. Harper was studying the alien life signs through the ship's internal sensors. Captain, their nervous systems are completely different from anything we've encountered. Our neural weapons are designed for Union species. These aliens have a totally different biology. More boarding pods were attaching to the ship. Jake could see at least 20 of them now, each one carrying 7 giant insect-like warriors. The New Horizon only had 30 crew members, and most of them were scientists and engineers, not fighters. Captain, Danny called over the comm, we're falling back to Deck 7. These things are pushing us back. They're not even trying to. Hurt us just walking through our lines like we're children with toy weapons. Jake made a decision that went against everything the Union had taught him. Amy, seal the bridge and prepare for emergency lockdown. Pete, I need you to come with me. We're going to the restricted storage area. Amy looked shocked. Captain, the restricted storage is off limits. Union regulations specifically forbid accessing those areas. Union regulations didn't prepare us for this, Jake said firmly. These aliens don't follow Union rules, so maybe we need to stop following them too. Jake and Pete made their way through the ship's corridors while the sounds of the alien advance grew closer. The Vorth were moving through the New Horizon like they owned it, ignoring the desperate attempts of the human crew to stop them. The restricted storage area was in the deepest part of the ship, behind 3 locked doors and a bioscanner. When Earth had joined the Union, they had been required to give up all their military weapons. But Jake's predecessor had been a careful man. He had hidden some of the old weapons in case of emergency, claiming they were historical artifacts that couldn't be destroyed. Jake's hand scanner opened the first lock. His command codes opened the second. The third lock required both his and Pete's biosignatures. The door slid open to reveal something that hadn't been seen in Union space for 15 years. A military armory. The weapons were old but well maintained. M4 carbines, shotguns, pistols, and boxes of ammunition. All of them had been sealed in protective cases, waiting for a day that Jake had hoped would never come. Pete whistled low. Captain, if the Union ever finds out about these ... if we don't use them now, the Union won't matter anymore. Jake replied. He picked up one of the rifles and checked the mechanism. It was simple, reliable technology that had served humans well for centuries. No complex electronics to be disrupted by alien weapons. No energy systems that could be overloaded. Just mechanical parts that worked the same way every time. Danny's voice came over the come again, now filled with panic. Captain, they've reached Deck 5. My people are out of ammunition for the pacification weapons, and these things are still just walking through us. They're hurting us like animals. Jake grabbed as many weapons as he could carry. Pete did the same, his face pale but determined. They had never planned for this moment, but Earth's violent history had prepared them in ways the peaceful Union species could never understand. Danny, fall back to the main corridor and hold position. We're coming with better equipment. What kind of equipment, Captain? Jake chambered a round in his rifle and felt the familiar weight of a real weapon in his hands. For the first time, since the attack began, he felt like they had a chance. The kind of equipment that actually works, he said Dot as they moved through the ship toward the sound of the alien advance. Jake realized that the next few minutes would determine not just the fate of his crew, but possibly the future of human-Union relations. The Union had taken away humanity's weapons and taught them to be peaceful. But sometimes, peace was not enough. Sometimes, you had to fight for the right to exist. The sound of alien clicking grew closer. Jake could hear his crew members calling, out in fear as they were pushed back by the unstoppable Vorth advance. The time for Union protocols was over. It was time to remind the galaxy why humans had survived on a world where everything tried to kill them. Jake and Pete reached the main corridor where Danny and his security team were making their last stand. The humans looked exhausted and scared. Their Union weapons lay scattered on the floor, useless against the alien invaders. Down the corridor, Jake could see the Vorth advancing slowly. They were in no hurry because they knew the humans had no way to stop them. The aliens were even more frightening up close. They stood 7 feet tall on 4 legs, with 2 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Their bodies were covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. Their heads were triangular, like a praying mantis, with large compound eyes that seemed to see everything. Captain, Danny whispered, what are those things you're carrying? Jake handed Danny one of the rifles. These are weapons from Earth's past. Before we joined the Union, these were how humans protected themselves. Danny looked at the rifle with confusion. But Captain, this is just mechanical parts. There's no energy source, no neural interface. How does it work? Watch and learn, Jake said. He raised his rifle and aimed at the lead Vorth warrior. The alien was about 50 feet away and walking forward with complete confidence. Jake squeezed the trigger. The sound that filled the corridor was unlike anything that had been heard in Union space for 15 years. The sharp crack of the gunshot echoed off the metal walls, creating a deafening boom that seemed to go on forever. The lead Vorth stumbled and fell, a hole punched clean through its natural armor. The effect on the other aliens was immediate and shocking. They stopped moving and began making rapid clicking sounds. Their confident advance turned into confused milling around. They had never heard anything like the sound of gunfire before. What was that? Danny asked, staring at his rifle in amazement. That was a kinetic projectile weapon, Jake explained quickly. It fires a small piece of metal very fast. No energy, no electronics, just physics. Pete was already figuring out how to work his shotgun. Captain, these things have never seen weapons like this before. Look at them. They're completely confused. The Vorth were indeed confused. They communicated through subsonic vibrations that traveled through the ship's hull. But the loud crack of the gunshots was disrupting their communication system. They couldn't talk to each other properly. Jake called out to his crew. Everyone take a weapon. Danny, show them how to use them. Pete, get to the engineering section and rig the ship's speakers to amplify these sounds. More gunshots rang out as the human crew opened fire. Each shot was like thunder in the confined space of the ship. The Vorth warriors, who had been advancing with such confidence, were now falling back in disorder. Their natural armor, designed to stop claws and energy weapons, was useless against high-speed metal projectiles. Dr. Harper's voice came over the comm system from the bridge. Captain, the Vorth ship is trying to contact their boarding party, but they're getting no response. The gunfire is completely disrupting their communication frequencies. Jake smiled grimly. The Union had always seen human weapons as primitive and crude, but sometimes primitive was exactly what you needed. The Vorth had evolved to fight energy weapons and natural attacks. They had no defense against something as simple as a bullet. Pete's voice echoed through the ship's speakers. Captain, I've got the PA system rigged. Every gunshot is now being broadcast through both ships. The Vorth can't coordinate their attacks anymore. The tide of battle was turning. The human crew, who had been helpless against the alien invaders just minutes before, were now pushing the Vorth back. The aliens' superior size and strength meant nothing when they couldn't communicate with each other, and their armor couldn't stop human weapons. Danny, take half the crew and clear the lower decks. I want every Vorth off this ship, Jake ordered. Yes, sir. What about the ones who are still alive? Jake thought for a moment. Union protocols called for treating all prisoners with respect and dignity. But these aliens had come to enslave or kill his crew. Take them prisoner if they surrender. If they don't surrender, stop them permanently. The human crew moved through the ship with deadly efficiency. They had been trained by the Union to avoid violence, but humans had been fighting for survival for thousands of years. That knowledge was still there, buried under 15 years of peaceful exploration. Within an hour, the new horizon was secure. The surviving Vorth warriors had been captured and locked in the cargo bay. The human crew looked at each other with a mixture of relief and shock. They had won a battle that should have been impossible to win, but Jake knew this was just the beginning. Through the main screen, he could see the Vorth command ship. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of the New Horizon, and it was powering up its weapons. Captain, Amy called from the bridge, the Vorth ship is charging its main weapons. They're going to try to destroy us. Jake made another decision that would have horrified the Union Council. All crew, prepare for boarding action. We're going to take that ship. Captain, Dr. Harper said over the comm, that's impossible. There are hundreds of Vorth on that ship. Dr. Harper, how many humans does it take to make noise? There was a pause as she considered the question. Just one, Captain. Just one human with the right weapon. Exactly. Pete, prepare the shuttle. Load it with every weapon we have left. We're going to teach these aliens what humans learned on Earth. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense. The human crew looked at their captain with new respect. For 15 years, they had followed Union rules and avoided conflict. But Jake was reminding them of something important. Before humans joined the Union, they had been the most successful predators on their planet. As the shuttle prepared to launch, Jake looked at his crew one more time. They were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. But they were humans, and humans had survived by adapting to any threat. Remember, Jake said as they prepared to board the enemy ship, these aliens expected us to be weak because the Union taught us to be peaceful. They didn't expect us to fight back. They definitely didn't expect us to win. The shuttle launched toward the Vorth command ship. Inside, 30 humans carried weapons that the galaxy had forgotten existed. They were about to remind the universe that some species earned their place in the stars not through wisdom or technology, but through the simple willingness to fight for survival. The war cry that echoed through the shuttle was in a language the Vorth had never heard before. It was the sound of a species that had climbed to the top of the food chain on a planet where everything was trying to kill them. It was the sound of humans going to war. The news of what happened in the Kepler 442 system reached the Galactic Union Council within hours. Jake Martinez sat in a cold metal chair in the center of the council chamber, surrounded by representatives from 12 different alien species. Above him, holographic displays showed the wreckage of 3 Vorth ships that his crew had captured or destroyed. Ambassador Zekthar of the Altarian Collective was the first to speak. The Altarians looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large eyes. They were known throughout the Union as the most peaceful species in the galaxy. Zekthar's voice was filled with disappointment and anger. Captain Martinez, you have violated every treaty that your species signed when joining the Union. You used kinetic weapons against another species. You initiated combat instead of seeking peaceful resolution. You have brought warfare back to a galaxy that has known peace for 2 centuries. Jake looked around the chamber at the alien faces staring down at him. Some looked angry, others looked afraid. All of them looked at him like he was a dangerous animal that might attack at any moment. Counselor Veltar of the Centauri Federation stood up next. The Centaurians were squid-like creatures with multiple arms and skin that changed color with their emotions. Right now, Veltar's skin was bright red with anger. The humans lied to us, Veltar said, his voice harsh through the translation device. They claimed to embrace our peaceful ways, but they secretly kept weapons of war. They are not fit to be members of the Union. I call for their immediate expulsion. Other council members began to speak, their voices growing louder with each accusation. Jake sat quietly and listened to them condemn his actions. He understood their anger. For 15 years, humans had followed every rule and treaty. They had been model citizens of the galactic community. Now that trust was broken, Ambassador Zekthar raised his hand for silence. Captain Martinez, before we vote on humanity's expulsion from the Union, you will have the chance to speak in your defense. What justification can you offer for your actions? Jake stood up slowly. He had prepared this speech during the long journey to the Union capital, but now that the moment was here, he decided to speak from his heart instead. Honorable counselors, you are right. We broke our treaties. We used weapons that we had promised to destroy. We chose violence when we should have chosen negotiation. But I want you to understand why we did these things. He paused and looked around the chamber. The Vorth Empire does not recognize the Union. They do not care about our treaties or our peaceful ways. When they found us, they did not want to talk. They wanted to enslave us. Your energy weapons, your negotiation protocols, your diplomatic immunity fields, none of these things work on an enemy that sees peace as weakness. Counselor Valtar's skin turned a deeper shade of red. You could have attempted further diplomatic contact. You could have tried to understand their culture. Instead, you chose the path of violence. With respect, Counselor, we tried. We used every first contact protocol in the Union Handbook. The Vorth response was to board our ship and attempt to capture our crew. They told us that negotiation was for the weak. Dr. Harper stepped forward from the observer section. She had been allowed to attend as Jake's scientific advisor. Honorable counselors, I have spent the past months studying the captured Vorth prisoners. Their culture is based entirely on conquest and domination. They see other species as either useful slaves or obstacles to be destroyed. They have conquered dozens of systems and enslaved or killed billions of beings. Ambassador Zekthar looked troubled. You are saying that diplomacy with these beings is impossible? I am saying that they view diplomacy as a sign of weakness. To them, any species that prefers talking to fighting is automatically inferior and deserves to be conquered. The council chamber fell silent. Jake could see the alien representatives looking at each other with worry. The Union had been built on the idea that all intelligent species could be reasoned with. The existence of a species that rejected this basic principle challenged everything they believed. Suddenly, alarms began ringing throughout the chamber. A young aide rushed to Ambassador Zekthar's side and whispered urgently in his ear. The ambassador's face went pale. "Counselors," Zekthar announced, "I have just received word that the Vorth Empire has launched a full invasion of Union space. 3 of our worlds are under attack. Altair Prime, Centauri Beta, and the mining colonies at Proxima are all reporting massive enemy fleets." The chamber erupted in panic. Council members were shouting questions and demands. Through it all, Jake sat quietly and waited. He knew what was coming next. Counselor Veltar's skin had turned from red to a sickly green color. "Ambassador Zekthar, what is the status of our defensive fleets?" The Altair Defense Force engaged the enemy with standard energy weapons and diplomatic contact attempts. The Vorth ships ignored all communication attempts and destroyed our entire fleet within 2 hours. Altair Prime has fallen. 8 billion Altarians are now under Vorth control. The silence in the chamber was deafening. 8 billion beings enslaved in a single day. The Union's peaceful methods had not just failed, they had been completely useless. Commander Scott Ryan entered the chamber without permission. He was a tall man in a military uniform that the Union had not seen in 15 years. Behind him walked a dozen other humans, all wearing the same type of clothing. "Honorable Counselors," Commander Ryan said, "I represent the Earth Defense Force. We have been monitoring the situation and are prepared to offer assistance." Ambassador Zekthar looked confused. Earth Defense Force? But humanity agreed to dissolve. "All military organizations, when you joined the Union, we agreed to follow Union law within Union space," Ryan replied. "But we never agreed to leave Earth defenseless. The Earth Defense Force has been preparing for this possibility for 15 years. Counselor Veltar stood up angrily. "More human deception. You have been building weapons while claiming to embrace peace." "We have been building defenses while hoping for peace," Ryan corrected. "There is a difference. We hoped that the Union's way would work forever. But we prepared for the possibility that someday we might meet an enemy that could not be reasoned with." Jake stood up and looked around the chamber. "Honorable Counselors, you have a choice to make. You can expel humanity from the Union and face the Vorth Empire with your energy weapons and diplomatic protocols. Or you can accept our help and give your people a chance to survive." The chamber fell silent again. Through the large windows, Jake could see Union ships fleeing from the outer system. The Vorth invasion was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Ambassador Zekthar looked older than his years. "Commander Ryan, what are you proposing?" "A joint defense force. Union technology combined with human weapons and tactics. Your people know more about space and energy than we do. Our people know more about warfare than anyone should have to know." The council members looked at each other with uncertainty. Everything they believed about peace and diplomacy was being challenged by an enemy that saw their virtues as weaknesses. Jake spoke one more time. "Counselors, we never wanted to be warriors again. We joined the Union because we wanted to be explorers and scientists and diplomats. But sometimes, if you want to protect the things you love, you have to be willing to fight for them." The vote was close, but it passed. The Union would accept human military assistance. As Jake left the chamber, he wondered if they had made this decision in time, or if the Vorth Empire was already too strong to stop. Outside, He could see human warships arriving at the Union capital. Ships that carried weapons, the Union had thought, were gone forever. The galaxy was about to remember why Earth was called a death world, and why the species that survived, they were so hard to kill. Admiral Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the Earthship Defender and watched the largest space battle in galactic history unfold before him. The Vorth Empire had brought over 300 ships to the Proxima Junction, the most important trade route in Union space. If they captured it, they would control access to half the galaxy. The Union had managed to gather 200 ships for the defense, but most of them were exploration and cargo vessels with light energy weapons. Against the massive Vorth warships, they looked like children's toys. Amy Brooks, now captain of her own ship, appeared on the communication screen. Admiral, the Union fleet is in position, but their captains are asking the same question. How do we fight an enemy that our weapons can't hurt? Jake looked at the tactical display. The Vorth ships were arranged in a perfect battle formation, advancing slowly and confidently toward the Union fleet. They had good reason to be confident. In the past month, they had destroyed every Union force that had faced them. Amy, tell the Union captains to stay behind our ships and follow our lead. We're going to show them something they've never seen before. A human battle plan. Commander Scott Ryan's voice came over the comm from the Earthship Victory. All human ships. This is Ryan. Remember what we learned from the first encounter. These aliens have never faced kinetic weapons. They communicate through subsonic vibrations. Loud noises disrupt their coordination. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and make as much noise as possible. Jake smiled grimly. The Union species had evolved beyond warfare, so they fought like scientists. Carefully, methodically, with precise energy weapons that disabled rather than destroyed. Humans had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them, so they fought like predators, fast, violent, and without mercy. All ships, commence. Attack. The human fleet surged forward, their engines roaring at maximum power. Behind them, the Union ships followed more cautiously. The contrast was obvious. The Union ships moved like they were conducting a careful experiment, while the human ships moved like they were hunting prey. The first collision between the fleets was devastating, but not in the way anyone expected. The Vorth had prepared for another easy victory against energy weapons and diplomatic attempts. Instead, they found themselves facing something they had never encountered: kinetic projectile weapons, fired by a species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years. The sound of the human weapons was amplified by the communication systems of every ship in the fleet. Jake had ordered all the human ships to broadcast their gunfire on every frequency possible. The result was a wall of sound that completely disrupted Vorth communication across their entire fleet. Dr. Harper, now serving as Jake's science advisor, monitored the alien communication channels. Admiral, the Vorth fleet is in complete chaos. They can't coordinate their attacks because our weapons are jamming their communication frequencies. But the real surprise came when the Vorth tried to use their bioelectric weapons against this human ships. The weapons that had easily disabled Union vessels had no effect on the simpler mechanical systems that humans preferred. Jake's chief engineer, Pete Collins, had insisted on keeping backup mechanical systems for everything important. Admiral, Pete called from the engine room, their disruptor weapons are bouncing right off us. Our mechanical backup systems are working perfectly. Captain Amy Brooks was leading a squadron of 6 human ships against a massive Vorth battleship. Her voice came over the comm, tight with concentration. Admiral, we're using the tactic we discussed. Small ships, high speed, close range attacks. These big Vorth ships can't turn fast enough to track us. Jake watched on his screen as Amy's ships darted around the huge alien vessel like angry bees attacking a bear. Their weapons punched holes in the Vorth armor, while the alien ship tried desperately to bring its main guns to bear. But the human ships were too fast and too unpredictable. The Union ships, following behind the human attack, were learning quickly. They had modified their energy weapons to work in combination with human kinetic weapons. The result was devastating. Energy beams that weakened the Vorth armor, followed by projectile weapons that punched clean through. But the real turning point came when Jake decided to lead a direct assault on the Vorth command ship. It was a massive vessel, twice the size of anything else in the battle. If he could capture or destroy it, the rest of the Vorth fleet would lose coordination. Amy, take your squadron and hit their engines. Scott, bring your heavy ships and attack. From the other side, I'm taking a boarding party directly to their command center. Amy's voice came back immediately. Admiral, that's suicide. There could be thousands of Vorth on that ship. Amy, how many humans does it take to make enough noise to disrupt an entire ship? There was a pause as she remembered their earlier conversation. Just one, Admiral. Just one human with the right weapon. Jake selected 20 volunteers from his crew and prepared for the most dangerous mission of his life. They loaded themselves with every kinetic weapon they could carry and headed for the shuttle bay. The boarding action was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The humans cut through the Vorth ship's hull and poured inside, their weapons creating a thunderous roar that echoed through every corridor. The Vorth warriors, despite their size and natural armor, had never faced an enemy that fought with such intensity and noise. The key to human success was not just their weapons, but their tactics. Where the Union species fought with careful precision, humans fought with chaos and unpredictability. They moved fast, attacked from unexpected directions, and created so much noise that the Vorth couldn't coordinate their defenses. Jake and his team fought their way to the command center, leaving a trail of confused and defeated aliens behind them. When they finally reached the bridge, they found something unexpected. The Vorth commander was trying to surrender. Through his translator, the alien leader spoke in a voice filled with fear. Stop the noise. Please stop the terrible noise. We will retreat. We will leave your space. Jake looked around the command center. It was filled with advanced technology that the Union scientists would want to study. But more importantly, it contained the communication systems that controlled the entire Vorth fleet. Dr. Harper, Jake called over his comm, I need you to study these alien communication systems. Can we use them to contact other Vorth fleets? Lisa's voice came back. Excited. Admiral, if we can access their network, we might be able to send a message to the entire Vorth Empire. Jake made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. Instead of simply defeating this one fleet, he was going to send a message that would prevent future invasions. Using the Vorth communication system, Jake broadcast a message to every Vorth ship and base in known space. The message was simple but effective. It was a recording of human weapons firing, amplified to maximum volume. The effect was immediate. Across Vorth space, the thunderous sound of human gunfire disrupted communication on thousands of ships. The Vorth Empire, which had been built on perfect coordination and communication, suddenly found itself unable to function. But Jake's message also included words. This is Admiral Jake Martinez of the human fleet. The Vorth Empire has attacked the Galactic Union and enslaved innocent people. We are giving you one chance to withdraw from all Union space and release your prisoners. If you refuse, we will bring this sound to every Vorth world in the galaxy. The response came within hours. Vorth fleets across the galaxy began withdrawing from Union space. The creatures that had seemed unstoppable just days before were fleeing from an enemy they couldn't understand or defeat. The Battle of Proxima Junction was over, but its effects would last for generations. The Union species, had learned that sometimes peace required the willingness to fight. The humans had proven that their primitive technology and barbaric nature actually made them the perfect protectors for a peaceful civilization. Ambassador Zekthar arrived at Proxima Junction 3 days after the battle. He found Jake standing in the observation deck of a captured Vorth ship, looking out at the mixed fleet of human and Union vessels. "Admiral Martinez," the ambassador said, "the Union Council has voted. We are offering humanity a new role in the galactic community." Jake turned to face the tall blue alien who had once condemned his actions. "What kind of role?" "We want humans to become the defenders of Union space. You would have the authority to maintain military fleets and use whatever weapons you deem necessary to protect Union citizens." Jake thought about the offer carefully. What about our weapons? What about the fact that we chose violence over diplomacy? Ambassador Zekthar was quiet for a long moment. "Admiral, we have learned something important from this war. Peace is not the absence of weapons. Peace is having weapons in the hands of people who only use them to protect others." Jake looked out at his fleet again. Human ships and Union vessels, working together, human weapons and Union technology, combining to create something stronger than either could achieve alone. "We accept," Jake said finally, "but we do this our way. We'll follow Union law and respect Union values. But when it comes to defending innocent people, we make the tactical decisions." "Agreed," the ambassador replied. "The galaxy needs guardians who understand that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be ready for war." As Jake watched the joint fleet preparing for patrol duties, he reflected on how much had changed. 15 years ago, humans had given up their weapons to join a peaceful galactic community. Now they were being asked to take up those weapons again, not as conquerors, but as protectors. The Vorth Empire still existed, but they had learned to fear the sound of human gunfire. Other aggressive species in the galaxy had received the same message. The Union was no longer defenseless. Jake's crew had started this journey as explorers and scientists. They were ending it as the galaxy's protectors. But perhaps that was what humans had always been meant to be, the species willing to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. The last entry in Jake's log read, "Today we learned that the galaxy doesn't need more sheep. Sometimes it needs sheepdogs. And sheepdogs, by definition, must have teeth." The sound of human laughter echoed through the ship as the crew prepared for their new mission. They were still explorers and scientists and diplomats. But now they were also something the galaxy had forgotten it needed. Warriors who fought not for conquest, but for the simple right of peaceful people to exist without fear. In the end, that was the most human thing of all.